motion. Item 10 is the motion from Councillor Fox. Would you like to move?
Thank you. I would, and hopefully a hard copy of the new motion has been distributed to everybody.
No.
Okay.
New motion.
Oh. There's been a little bit of tweaking last minute, so I apologise for that. And I'll just read that out while Paul is getting that out to elected members. So I'll move the following motion in 3 parts and request that they be voted on individually, as it's my understanding that some elected members support parts of this motion but not others. So I'll move that Part 1, Council notes that Section 19 of the Anti-Discrimination Act 1998 states that a person by public act must not incite hatred towards, serious contempt for or severe ridicule of a person or a group of persons on the ground of the race of the person or any member of the group, or any disability of the person of any member of the group, or the sexual orientation or lawful sexual activity of any person or any member of the group, or the religious belief or affiliation of or religious activity of any person or any member of the group, or the gender identity or intersex variations of sex characteristics of the person or any member of the group, and urges members of the Hobart community to respect and observe this law. Part 2 requests the CEO to seek advice and undertake consultation on venue guidelines, ensures its premises are not used for any event that may facilitate any criminal act or unlawful and illegal activity, including any event that may breach Section 17, Part 1 and 19 of the Anti-Discrimination Act 1998. Part 3 is that Council suspends all bookings for venues where the proposed event does or is likely to cause offence to a portion of the community until guidelines are developed and implemented. As a member of the LGBTIQ+ community, I am deeply offended and upset that this matter and several others relating to the rights of trans people have carried on for so long. Why we don't have the mechanisms in place to protect people either in this chamber or in our public places or in our community from open discrimination, despite Tasmania having some of the world's best anti-discrimination laws, is beyond me. It's not actually hard to treat people with kindness, compassion and acceptance, whether or not you understand or agree with their worldview or identity. And that's the sort of community I believe in and stand for. I'd like to sincerely thank Paul and Kelly for their assistance in this matter and commend the motion as a whole to you. I deeply hope that everyone around the table can support this motion unanimously, as that would send a strong message of support to the LGBTIQ+ community, that we see, hear and value them, and we're not just paying lip service to them when we endorse such documents as our LGBTIQ+ commitment plan, social inclusion strategy and community vision documents. And I hope you've all taken the time to read my rationale behind this motion. Thank you very much.
That's been seconded by Councillor Sherlock. Has Alderman Zuko got a copy of the motion? Alderman Zuko? The new one?
I'm just trying to bring it up right now, Lord Mayor. I think I have.
An email to you though, that's good.
That's correct.
Okay, further discussion on the motion. Alderman Thomas?
Yes, thanks, Lord Mayor. Can I just clarify? We are going to, well, we're obviously going to have a vote about whether we vote in pieces, but item 3 suspends all bookings for venues where the proposal event does or is likely to cause offence to a portion of the community until guidelines are developed and implemented. As we don't appear to have guidelines, I'm assuming that we will add the word future before bookings in section 3.
Is that a question for Councillor Fox? Or?
No, not really. I would just like clarity that ask a question through you to the General Manager that, well, I can move it as an amendment if I need to, that Part 3 have the word future, as we've already committed to this event, and by reinforcing 1 and 2, anybody who's holding or involved with that event will be further advised as to the need to comply with the law when they do hold the event. So I'll move it as an amendment that we include the word future before bookings in Part 3. Seek a seconder for that.
So that's an amendment, future, from Alderman Thomas. Does anyone want to second that amendment? Alderman Briscoe. Further discussion on the motion or the
Yeah, look,
amendment?
we did receive some advice, which doesn't seem to be made public by Mr Jackson today. It's not, there's no word confidential in front of us, and we may be in, and I've checked with Mr Jackson that it's not breaching if I mention what's in this, except one item in this email we all got today, and that's to do with something to do with Speaker's Corner. I won't mention that, but there is a danger if we cancel a booking that's in the future. That's, I think, the booking for this a current future booking. That's on our books. It's been accepted. Presumably the money's been paid. Insurance has been noted, and all those sorts of things. That we're in danger of breaking the law ourselves. So the organisers of this forum may be able to take the council to the anti-discrimination people for a breach of the Act by cancelling it. Now, I don't know why that advice wasn't available and put up on the hub for the whole public to read it, and I would hope that happens. However, to the current forum that has been accepted by the council, and I'll be supporting the motion of the amendment by Alderman Thomas, and there has been some already commentary about it. Former Tasmanian Anti-Discrimination Commissioner Robin Banks said, while she opposed the group, she believed the event should go ahead regardless. Also, the head of Equity Tasmania, find the name of the person.
It's Rodney Croom.
No, it's not Rodney Croom.
Maddie Wright.
Maddie Wright, Dr. Maddie Wright. Dr. Maddie Wright? No, Maddie Wright. She's having, he or she, I don't know, they are having they intend to have a peaceful protest. So there are the two people who I respect who said the event should go on. If we have the ability to cancel events, it is cancelling an event, we are imposing, maybe we're imposing our political will on a group that's in good faith have organised a forum. Now this forum, I'm told, will have a senator speak at it on the forum, as a forum, one of the forum speakers, 2 professors from Mainland University, a doctor, a trans person, and members of the public could go to it and ask questions, seek clarification, because the issue, for example, the issue of trans people in sport is a controversial issue. It is a issue that's been considered by various sporting bodies around the world. It's not going to, I can't see just discussing whether trans people should be in biological event for women, for example, who were born male. I can't see that issue would offend anyone because it is a current issue. There's other issues to do with the law. Now, since my time on council, we've had forestry issues discussed, marriage equality issues and forums. We've had salmon farm issues. We have and also Councillor Dutta and I turned up at the City Hall, and he was just ordinary Mr Dutta then.
Never been ordinary.
We went to the Pauline Hanson rally at the City Hall. It was packed.
Shame.
We sat together. I had to hold Mr Dutta down because he was...
30 seconds.
All right, okay. It did get a little bit... The hall keeper was worried about the floor because the floor was very thin, and therefore he closed the venue down. The meeting had started, and we left, but we turned up, not to be offended, but to listen to what that person had to say. Now, she's still involved in politics. Thank you. Could I just have I've never asked this for about 2 years, but an extension in time?
Moved by Alderman Briscoe, second by...
No, it wasn't me.
It has to be moved by someone else. Okay, moved by Alderman Baraka, seconded by Councillor Dutta.
And I think...
All those in favour say aye.
How long?
What was that?
30
One,
seconds.
I think.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. All those in
I
favour...
won't go to 2 minutes yet.
All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously.
And I thank the kindness of the seconder and the mover of that. Thank you very much. We represent some members of the community. I hear views that I'm offended to almost every day. In fact, over the week on social media, I was criticised because I was old and male. Old and male. Was I offended? Oh, I can't do anything about either of those, I'm sorry. But I was supposed to apologise because I was old. It appears that is part of, you cannot discriminate, and male, you can't discriminate. But I was online, on a social media Mercury website. They were criticising me because I was old and male. Should I be offended? Well, I had a little laugh, thinking I can't do much about either of them. There are issues in the community I agree with and some I disagree with. I turn up to public meetings, I turn up to forums to learn about more information of how people are respectfully dealing with these disputes in the community. I noticed Jordan Peterson, a Canadian academic, 2 years ago he was cancelled for a Cambridge event. He was invited to speak and then he was cancelled because there was a few rallies against him. Well, 2 weeks ago, he got invited again and he was accepted. So I think we cannot be the arbitrator of what the public think.
That's
Thank you.
time.
Good.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Councillor Dutta?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I am aware of the fact that for me, there are two observations that I make with regards to this. And firstly, the rights of the people, which is very, very important. And I refer to the rights under the Constitution. As we all know that Australia does not have a Charter of Human Rights. But our rights are embedded in the Constitution. And from memory, I did constitutional law many years ago, and being old like my colleague, I tend to forget. But I think from memory, there are about 5 rights which are quite clearly stated. And one or two of them, for example, from memory, is the right to vote that we have under the Constitution, the right to have a jury for trial, and so forth. Having said that, when it comes to other rights, it's not clearly mentioned in the Australian Constitution. However, it is my understanding that the common law has made a number of decisions where these rights are implied in the Constitution, and therefore they are quite clearly stated as to what these rights are. Now, I also understand that with regards to the constitutional rights, the common law rights, and also the legislative rights, which is in our rules and regulations in our laws, we also have international rights in the treaty, which is very, very important. And for me, if you look at the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, it very clearly states that we have a right of freedom of speech in Article 18. In Article 19, it states very clearly that we have a right to freedom of opinion and expression. So for me, it is important to balance these two, the rights that we have as citizens, that it should not be taken away, but at the same time we realize that rights does not in any way give us a license. And we all understand that. The laws guide our particular behavior and actions. But the second observation I make is in regards to the risk. So while on the one hand we have our rights, on the other we have the risk. And this is where we need to have this balancing act. Under this act, we have got to decide that. Now, as I have read the Anti-Discrimination Act, Section 21(1)(c) makes us as a council vicariously liable. If we know that there's going to be hatred in any way and we have allowed it, we will be legally responsible for that. And so that is vicariously we will be responsible. Now we know that this has been told to us. If we go down that path, then we would be liable. The positive thing is that we can mitigate this. And the email that was sent to us makes this point and says quite clearly that we'll be able to mitigate this particular aspect of the concern that we have. And the second part of that is this, is that, we can in fact breach Section 19 and we can breach Section 14. Section 19 is, if we breach that, we will hurt those who are going to be hurt and we will be in breach of that. And Section 14 has already been referred to us that we will breach that and be taken to discrimination under that act to say that we have now taken away the right of these people to get together. And so therefore, I am more inclined to support 1 and 2, but I have my reservations for 3. And I wait more discussions on that. Thank you.
Alderman Sexton.
Yes, I strongly support 1 and 2, and I think it is disappointing that we don't have a policy which protects against people who may be discriminated against or vilified for any purpose or any reason, but we don't. The fact is we don't. And we need one, and I think all of the discussions that we've had amongst ourselves and with council officers indicate clearly that we do need one. So I think it is very important that anybody that uses our council facilities is aware of Part 1, but also that we proceed with Part 2 as urgently as we possibly can. I also have concerns about Part 3, and I even have concerns about Part 3 if it's amended. And the reason for that is that I think our guidelines are going to need to be very specific about how we measure or how we determine offence. It may well be, for example, that all of the groups that Alderman Briscoe referred to would not have been able to hold any of their meetings because there would have been somebody who could put their hand up and say, I'm offended if you say bad things about logging. I'm offended if you say bad things about salmon. I'm offended if you say bad things about this or that. So I don't understand how Part 3 will work. I don't understand what it is that somebody will have to do in order to have a booking cancelled. I do not understand that. Because anybody, as we've heard, can say this or that causes them offence. So we need to have it very clearly spelt out in my opinion, in our policy exactly what process we are going to go through to determine whether the offence is such, or the potential offence is such, that the best option is to refuse the booking or cancel the booking. So on that note, I will just reiterate, I strongly support 1 and 2. We need a policy. We need a policy that protects the groups that can potentially be discriminated against or vilified. But I don't think that we should just rush out and say, okay, we're going to suspend all bookings to venues where the proposed event does or is likely to cause offence, because there's always going to be somebody who'll say, that group, I don't like that group, whatever they're saying will cause me offence, and are we going on the basis of that simply cancel the booking? I suspect not. But then we'll have arguments between different groups as to why you cancelled them, you didn't cancel us, or why and vice versa. So I think we need to be very careful. We need the policy. We need it put in place, and we need to. We should have learned from previous issues that we've had with this type of thing, but we didn't, and that is our fault as elected members. But now we've got a chance to fix it, and I think we should fix it as soon as we possibly can. And it may or it may not be possible to fix it in time, such that we can then look at our policy and say, okay, well, we've now looked at our policy, and your planned meeting does not meet our requirements. So therefore, I'm afraid we are now going to have to cancel it because we have a policy, and your meeting does not meet the requirements of our policy. But that's something that we'll all have to wait for.
Alderman,
Sorry. Oh,
yeah, sorry.
I just have a point of clarification for the previous speaker
Clarification
and
from Councillor
probably a couple
Fox.
before as well. I'd just like to draw members' attention to the difference between being offended by an external issue like logging or salmon and being vilified for an identity characteristic like race or gender. Those are things that somebody can't actually control, as opposed to, I don't like logging or salmon farming. I'd just like you all to please bear that in mind.
Thank you, Councillor
Okay,
Fox.
so just to respond to that, that's not what Part 3 says. Part 3 says suspends all bookings for venues where the proposed event does or is likely to cause offence to a portion of the community until guidelines are developed. And I think that is exactly why we need the policy, because it may well be that we do need to specify precisely in our policy which groups and what type of offence, and that's not clear in what is proposed tonight.
Okay.
Can I just clarify that as well, please?
Yeah,
Sorry, thank
sure.
you, Peter. And I fully accept that. I think Part 3 could probably be a little bit more clear about that. I don't think it should be as simple as causes offence. I think it should be something along the lines of that aligns with the Anti-Discrimination Act, so that it names up that as part of it.
Okay. Alderman, so there's a few things that have been raised actually also around the word policy rather than guidelines by Alderman Sexton, but and the word urgently I think you are hoping for too. So, but I don't know whether you want to ask them to be added, because you referred to a policy, but it refers here as guidelines, and it is a little bit different. And there was also the request, Alderman Sexton, that this be done urgently, which could be something you ask Councillor Fox to...
I'm perfectly happy for it to be done urgently, provided it can be done thoroughly and properly. And I'd be also very interested to know what other councils do. I'm sure this is not unique to us, this sort of issue, and how do they manage it, or not only councils but other organisations that have the potential for public meetings. So I'm happy for urgent to be put in. I'm a little bit reluctant to have a whole series of amendments around 3, but that's not going to be up to me, of course, because that means that we're trying to develop some sort of policy or some sort of policy, if you like, on the run, and we may make mistakes and we may miss people out and have a whole heap of unintended consequences.
So, Councillor Fox, are you happy to accept in the urgent, request the CEO to urgently seek advice?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I agree, I don't think we should be making policy on the run, but I do think the word offence needs to be replaced with something that aligns with the
Separate motion or amendment, Councillor Fox, at this stage.
Alderman Zurko's been...
Yeah, I'm coming to that. I'm just seeing whether Councillor Sherlock is happy with the addition of the urgently.
Yeah, happy with that.
All right, Alderman Zuko.
I'm now going to ask a question first, but before I ask a question, I'd like to point out that my best friend's a Muslim, and I'll get to that a little bit later. My question is to the appropriate officer in regards to the current booking. The question I would like to ask: has the council accepted the booking? And did the conditions the current council has in regards to any bookings at the town hall were accepted by both parties?
Mr. Jackson?
Through you, Lord Mayor, yes, the booking has been accepted, and yes, as I understand it, the terms and conditions of the booking were accepted.
Look, I'm going to give a little lesson to our legal entourage here. There's a legal contract, and I assure you that if someone wants to go down the track of fighting this council, it won't be under the Anti-Discrimination Act. It could be under law and common law. If anyone wants to start chasing down common law, you will find that common law in contract can be verbal and can be written. And even if this was a verbal contract, if both parties accepted it, and it can be proved that both parties accepted it, it's still a contract. This is a written contract that we need to understand. So that's first and foremost. Now, in regards to what this new motion is we are assuming that most likely something may happen. Now, it doesn't mean that if my friend who is a Muslim decides to book the town hall, that there could be matters put forward that could be against my religion, who I am Catholic. Because that's what we're doing here. We are actually creating something that we should not be creating. And I've said to any person that's asked me today, as far as I'm concerned, any person that books the town hall and books it under the current status has got a legal and binding contract. Now what we're doing now is we're going down the track of making any booking has to do with something to do with anti-discrimination. What's the next one? To ask someone about, you know, what age they are? What we need to have in respect of a policy on bookings in the council, it should be very, very clear that we should have a policy that has a contract with the council that they would meet and make sure that that whatever event is being held at the town hall is held within accordance to state and federal laws, whatever they may be. And if we have a policy in place that the person, whoever is booking the town hall, has signed off, that is the contract, and if they breach those laws, then the people that breach the law are the ones that can be taken to task, not the Hobart City Council, because we have a contract with this organisation. Look, I'm going to plead with everybody here tonight and say to you that we're going down the wrong track. I fully support point 2. I believe that what we need to be doing, and also Alderman Sexton, is going down the track of having a policy and a well-thought policy that ensures the council is protected not only from what we may assume could happen at this meeting, but what could possibly happen in the future if my mate who is a Muslim decides to book the hall and I as a Catholic may have some issues with it. I'm sorry, we are making this into a mountain because we have all got our views and opinions. To my point of view, I actually support both sides of the actual argument here in this specific matter, but I don't believe we're doing the right thing by our whole community in defining a small component of what our policy should be on who hires our hall. We represent the ratepayers of Hobart, and there are probably a lot of other diverse opinions in a lot of other diverse areas, but we're being very specific in respect of just one specific matter. I'm sorry, it's too defined here.
30 seconds, Alderman Zirko.
Okay, I will only support part 2, and there is no way known that anyone should support part 3, because I've got to say, if I was the organisation that had my booking suspended, I wouldn't be arguing on any other part but law.
Further discussion. Councillor Coates.
Look, thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I just want to start with an observation, and that is that this motion was brought forward by an elected member, and in some ways, I think it's a good thing if someone has a genuine, or comes to the, someone comes to the position that they believe that there's going to be an unlawful activity taking place within the council's resources, or the council some way as an organisation aiding and abetting, or aiding and abetting is not the right word, but facilitating. You know, I think it is appropriate that they flag it and bring it up. I mean, it might make it uncomfortable because we've got to debate it, but you know, if a member of the community had approached me as an elected member and said, look, are you aware that the council's organisation is involved in this, and that, you know, might be illegal, might be this, you know, I think it is appropriate that gets flagged. In regards to the specific motion in front of me, I mean, number one, I think we've all discussed that is the law, and it's good that we reiterate that. Number two, I think I agree with Alderman Sexton's comments. We do need these guidelines, and as a guideline, we might decide as a council to go slightly further. You know, there is a reputational risk around if we have stuff happening and all the videos and imagery shows Hobart City Council and building and all that in the background. That's probably a discussion for the staff and the executive when they look to implement these guidelines, and what guidelines they propose to provide to groups that approach us. But I think at the moment, when it comes to number 3, the litmus test is sort of different to what the law states, and you know, we do find ourselves in a position where, as an organisation, we have had a booking made, and the booking, by all accounts, was made under the current system. And I think, you know, at a certain point, I've got to put the risk management hat on for the council as a group, and you know, I think we do run the risk of the other side, and as we saw, which is ultimately by saying you can't do something here, we run the risk of us being discriminatory. So look, I think I'm supporting what Alderman Sexton ultimately put forward, but I just wanted to add that, you know, if I came to the conclusion, or anyone flagged, a member community flagged with me, that us as an organisation was doing something that was wrong, or saying something, you know, it is actually appropriate if this comes forward. It does enable it to be discussed and whatever, it might be uncomfortable, but you know, I think ultimately Hobart City Council has a lot of staff, a lot of activity, a lot of venues, a lot of functions that we run. I have no doubt that over the years there's been all sorts of nefarious activities that have taken place in some of them, and you know, we as elected members out in the community sometimes get this feedback, and we should be able to bring it forward. So in this instance, given the information that the emails we've received and the discussion held today, I think under the current guidelines or lack of guidelines that we have, unfortunately we've got to stick to what's in the Act, and unless we've got clear advice that the activity that's going to take place will contravene the Anti-Discrimination Act, I think we probably have to stick down the path of 1 and 2, but I just wanted to make that observation. Thank you.
Further discussion? Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, I'll start by saying, look, I appreciate that there's many people in the community that are might be uncomfortable or might feel confronted by some of the conversations around this issue. And I think it's important that, it hasn't seemed to be the case for the most part, but I'm not going to talk about the merits of what's going to be discussed at this meeting, because I think the issue is more about whether or not those wanting to have the meeting should be afforded the right to do so on council property. We have a great space here in Town Hall and City Hall, and we have a whole wide range of events, from weddings to sporting events to flower shows and all sorts of other occasions. But the core reason and the main reason that these spaces exist in the first place is that they're public civic spaces, and Town Hall especially, it's a public civic space that's used so that members of the public can get together and discuss or debate issues. That's why they call those big congregations town halls. And that needs to extend to issues that go beyond what the elected members of the day might feel comfortable with or might agree with. That is the nature of political discourse, especially when you talk about critically important issues such as what this is. I think it's absolutely critical that we not get into the, well, I agree with what these guys are saying, so I think we should allow it, or I disagree with these guys, so I don't think we should allow it. I'll take on board and wholeheartedly agree with the points made by Councillor Dutta so eloquently, as well as Alderman Sexton, as well as the point made by Alderman Briscoe, who raised the reference to former Anti-Discrimination Commissioner Robin Banks. I did see a different article other than the Mercury one that reported Ms Banks' comments. It goes a little bit further, so I'll just read this directly because I think it's important. I think it's important to note that Ms Banks has a history with this group, and I think in many occasions has wholeheartedly disagreed, and I think they've butted heads on many occasions and threatened legal action against each other. So I'd hardly say that Ms Banks is an avid supporter of these people. But the quote goes from the article, Banks falls short of calling to cancel the group's upcoming booking and subsequent forum planned for next month, saying it's a dangerous line to toe. My view has also been, and this is in quotes, that if they want to have their views expressed, they can do that in places which do less harm. If they would like to talk in the town hall to a bunch of like-minded people, then that's part of the political discourse, and it's important that it not be shut down. Once again, this is different to people, and that's a whole different conversation, having stalls in public areas, saying things that might confront members of the community. But we have a space here. People know the event's happening. If people feel unsafe by what's said at these events or uncomfortable by what's said at these events, the beauty of living in a free country is that they aren't required to attend. And as was said earlier, I think by Alderman Briscoe, part of this freedom of political discussion and freedom of political expression is that those that disagree with the event are more than free to protest or picket the event in a peaceful manner. That's been the way that political discourse and political expressions happens in this country, and that's how we have a functioning, vibrant political society. That's how we have a functioning democratic society, where those that have views are able to express them without fear of being silenced because of those views. And I'll make the further point that when there is hateful comments, when there is
30 seconds.
Lord Mayor, I'll move that I get an extra minute, please.
Moved by Alderman Briscoe, seconded by Councillor Dutta. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously.
Thank you. When you have, I don't want to reflect on any particular comments, but when you do have views or comments that might be nasty, when you have white supremacists, or you have fundamentalist political activists or religious extremists, the best cure for that sunlight, to have these conversations happening deep, dark underground where no one can see or hear them, is where the danger starts. So, Lord Mayor, I, like many of the others that have spoken tonight, would support part one, and I'd support the part two. I think it's more than reasonable. I think it's necessary that we have a policy or guideline or whatever the word that we're choosing to use, so that there is an understanding about what this council sees to be appropriate for its public spaces. But that needs to be fair and it needs to be consistent. It definitely shouldn't be picking sides on an issue. But I think if we have an act, and I think if the requirement is that events that are held on council property are lawful, and there's an agreement, as Alderman Zuko said, there's an agreement that's signed to require that they accept responsibility for any unlawful behaviour, then I think that's a step there, but that's something to come through a policy. But I can't in good conscience support part three.
That's time.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Further discussion. Councillor Harvey.
Lord Mayor, look, I'm comfortable with parts 1 and parts 2. And just a comment that any discourse in council, hopefully now and in the future, will have boundaries, and those boundaries are set by the set by the Anti-Discrimination Act 1998, and that's what I assume will underpin our policies. The CEO will arrange and deliver for us. But I'm also cautious about part 3 and the unintended consequences of banning or cancelling bookings or suspending bookings for now. I'm happy to wait until we get our policy settled before we cancel any future bookings. But also, because there's just no guidelines at the moment, so I'm happy to wait for the guidelines to come through. So I won't be supporting part 3, and there's a number of people around the table have said they don't want to support part 3, but it looks like part 1 and part 2 are fine, and they should be, comfortably agreed to tonight. But part 3, I won't be supporting.
Further discussion. Councillor, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Just a query, do we have any further words or wording for part 3 to try and improve what sounds quite open?
Through you, Lord Mayor, Councillor Fox provided me with the amended wording, if you're happy for that.
Okay.
So part 3 part 3 says suspends all future bookings, picks up the Alderman Thomas amendment, suspends all future bookings for venues where the proposed event does or is likely to breach the Anti-Discrimination Act 1998 until the policy is developed and implemented.
Likely to. So the clarification of that, so what it's saying is, say for this group has got a booking in May.
February.
Oh, February, sorry, I'm looking at the last year's date, or earlier date, February. So there's always a possibility of speakers or people from the audience or in the forum to breach that act, therefore there's a likelihood, therefore the event would be cancelled, according to Amendment 3, Part 3.
Can I clarify?
My understanding is that it's not a cancel, it's across the board. It's all future bookings that...
But I think you said...
It's a suspension, isn't it?
No, I'm asking for clarification from the legal officer. Does it mean that the booking that has been booked and accepted by the council would be cancelled under that, if that clause got passed?
Through you, Lord Mayor, I'm not sure that I can answer that on the fly here.
So we have no doubt, in other words, we're uncertain about the effect of that amendment, that number 3?
Through you, Lord Mayor, as it relates to this particular event, yes.
Yes, uncertainty.
We would have to take on notice.
Alderman Zuko's got a question first, Alderman Thomas.
Yeah, Lord Mayor, look, I've got to say it's very difficult to hear all the debate, and it's fine enough, but I just want to clarify, are we voting on these 3 matters all separately, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's all. I'll just leave it at that at this point in time.
All right, Alderman Thomas.
It may not matter, but it was definitely intended that any current approval would be unaffected. In other words, the word future bookings was any person who came to the council after now.
Amendment gets through. So I
Correct.
think we've still got to vote on the future,
Yeah.
but then there's also the tying it much more closely to an assessment about whether the...
Understand that entirely, Lord Mayor. I just want to make it quite clear that the word future was intended for anybody who comes forthwith rather than anybody who's already been and received their approval.
Okay, further discussion.
Lord Mayor, I don't know if you know what the 20th of November signifies, but that is the Transgender Day of Remembrance, and in fact we had the transgender flags up there with the Christmas regalia, but on the front of town, in remembrance of those transgender people who lost their lives in the course of the last 12 months. And I went to a very small ceremony that day in relation to remember those people across the world who had died. Some of the people there suggested that it was probably an underrepresentation, but there were hundreds of names read out to remember somebody's life. And there were probably, it was probably underreported even in our city, but certainly across Australia, for those people who lost their lives through suicide or possibly through acts of violence in relation to them being transgender. So it was very emotional from my perspective, and made even more pertinent when on that very day, the 20th of November, those transgender flags were desecrated out the front of our town hall. So, you know, like, this is a real issue. We don't have justice for, and we don't have recognition for the plight of people who are transgender, who have to defend their position every day. Now, we have a motion in front of us, and it has moved to the very general in the notice that was first presented by Councillor Fox, and I appreciate that it may not reflect exactly what they feel they might have wanted to put forward, but in some ways I think taking the specifics out of what is quite concerning for people from the LGBTIQ and particularly transgender people, their concerns about what might be discussed are palpable. I've spoken to quite a number of people and was also going to put something up myself, but felt that perhaps the spotlight on the event that has brought this motion to us was probably not such a worthwhile thing to do. So I certainly have a difference of approach than Councillor Fox on this one, as advised by various people I spoke to. Having said that, I think this is really important that we get this policy and what our council does or doesn't do in relation to vicariously supporting something that might be spurring hate speech. That's not to say it necessarily is, but there are certainly a lot of members of the transgender and LGBTI community who do have their concerns in relation to this. So I think this is a good motion. I do have problems with part 3 because I just can't see even, and perhaps Mr. Jackson, you might be able to read it out again. But I think it's in some ways superfluous if we can get the CEO to really get everything in place. I know it's been frustrating for a number of us in relation to how long it's taken to get this policy clear and in place. But I think this motion really spells out that we need to do it. So I just ask again, Mr. Jackson, if you would read that again.
Through you, Lord Mayor.
Yes.
Part 3 suspends all future bookings for venues where the proposed event does or is likely to breach the Anti-Discrimination Act 1998 until the policy is developed and implemented.
Okay, Alderman Zuko's got his hand up.
Lord Mayor, did Alderman Thomas move
Future.
the amendment for part 3, is that correct?
Yes. Future, the word future.
Yeah, okay. Well, could I ask Alderman Thomas a question, if I may?
Yes.
Through you, Lord Mayor, to Alderman Thomas. Is it your intent there that any future bookings that come forward as of today, is that where your intent, is that your intent of the amendment?
Yes, the current booking, Alderman Zuko, would not be affected at all.
Okay, so may I just suggest that the wording could be something down the line of that the council not accept any future bookings that come forward from today until such time a policy is developed. That will make it very, very clear that any booking that comes in tomorrow will not be accepted until our policy is in place. That's the best way to go.
CEO.
Lord Mayor, I'm just clarifying that through to you, Alderman Zuko. So that obviously would mean that we wouldn't accept bookings, or are you saying that we'd be, yeah?
May I provide you an example again?
Thank you.
What if my friend tomorrow who's a Muslim decides to make a booking and I'm a Catholic? I'm just giving you that point.
Sorry, I just have a point of clarification. I understand Alderman Thomas's amendment in terms of future booking. The intent of this motion, quite obviously, and I want to make that crystal clear to everybody here, is that this specific event does not go ahead. So I think that should be moved as not an amendment. I think, yeah. maybe as a, sorry, what's the right word to use? Foreshadow, thank you. Foreshadow motion for part 3.
We do have the future, we do have the current amendment of Alderman Thomas, which is about the future bookings and the current linking it, not to every single booking that might come to this council, but to ones that may breach the Anti-Discrimination Act.
Well,
This one quite clearly does. So,
Well, okay, I don't want to go into debate now, and you'll get a chance to sum up. Councillor Fox, yes.
Yes, we're getting to the area of uncertainty now. A real uncertainty. Is the amendment going to amend the now new Part 3, which the legal officer has said there's uncertainty about it already because he couldn't answer or he indicated an opinion. He indicated an opinion that he couldn't give me a definite answer whether the current booking for this forum could go ahead or not. And now we've got this amendment. I want clarity and certainty of what number 3 is going to be. Now, it's in the hands of the Councillor Jax. It is in the hands because number 3, if she wishes to have the forum cancelled, it has to be spelled out, and I think it has to be spelled out in number 3.
So you're now going into...
No, I'm asking a
debate.
question to Councillor Fox now. Can I ask that question? Can you make it more certain, Part 3?
Look, I think we've got...
I've asked the question.
I think Councillor Fox has made an amendment to Part 3 already, haven't you?
it's just in relation to the Anti-Discrimination Act instead of causes offence.
Okay. All right. So I think we've got an amendment about future bookings, which will mean bookings from this point, from this day forward, and we've got a tighter definition of bookings that might risk breaching the Anti-Discrimination Act.
Lord Mayor, yeah, look, I think your summary is good, but I think we're at loggerheads because Councillor, even before that we voted on it, Councillor Fox has a different interpretation to what was just put forward, that in actual fact, this event, the event that's been booked, I think Alderman Zuko actually nailed it by saying any bookings made after today are not accepted.
That would be capturing every single event. Yeah,
But we don't want to be in a situation where there's any doubt about Section 3 as we have it at the moment, because I'm putting it forward with respect that booking that has been the subject of my email trade for the last 4 days, in actual fact, is not affected by the proposed Section 3 or any of this motion. In other words, it's allowed to go ahead. But clearly, with respect to Councillor Fox, they don't believe it.
Okay,
So
I
they
think
don't want that.
Yeah,
outcome.
I've got to be careful about meeting procedures here, but I mean the CEO could determine at a later stage about whether she has concerns about the about whether current bookings would breach the discrimination.
Lord Mayor, may I ask a question for you to the legal officer or CEO? Have we written to the current persons that have got the booking and referenced section Part 1, Section 19 of the Anti-Discrimination Act?
CEO?
Lord Mayor, I can't say definitively, but I don't believe so.
Okay. The next question is, could this motion also have added to it that we write to the current booking or any other current bookings, I mean right across the board, and advise all bookings that they should adhere to Section 19 of the Anti-Discrimination Act?
Okay. It sounds like it's another amendment, Alderman Zuko.
I'm just putting that as a potential suggestion to the CEO on whether or not that would... Sorry?
Do you want that as an amendment?
I can't move an amendment, Lord Mayor. I've already spoken, unless you're going to change the rules.
No, I think you can move an amendment at any stage.
Well, I'm going to move an amendment, Lord Mayor, that considering that we want to go down the track of making sure that our council abides by state and federal laws, I think the only other solution to Part 3 in respect of any future bookings that we write to the current bookings that we have, advising them of the relevant sections of the Act and state and federal laws, and any future booking until we have a policy are advised of the Act and state and federal laws, and once until such time that occurs. So I'll move it. I'll move that as an amendment, Lord Man. That saves everybody any headaches.
Sure. Seconder for that
We've
amendment.
totally foreshadowed amendment.
Oh, no, it's a...
Totally foreshadowed.
Vote on the first amendment.
We haven't voted on the first amendment.
Of course.
Leave that as a foreshadow, Lord Man, please.
No, but we can hold, we're not going to debate that amendment, but we can put the amendment at some, I mean, we're building the motion, like if people want to add amendments to the motion.
That's time voting happens.
Passes or fails, you go to the second amendment.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But I've just got one I've got one now, so once everyone's had a say, I'll put all of the amendments that we now have, which is 1, to add the word future, and 2, to Alderman Zuko's one about writing. The other ones have been accepted by Councillor Fox as the mover of the motion, so they've been accepted in, which was the urgently. So if there's no further discussion on the motion or the amendments, I'm going to say something, and then I think I'll put the amendments. I'll put the amendments, and then Councillor Fox can sum up. Okay, so look, it's been a good discussion. I think from my perspective, it is important that we do all 4 elements that are now sort of being proposed. I want to just remind people that this is a really serious law, the Anti-Discrimination Act, and it's not just about if we're concerned that there might be events that incite hatred, but that also a public act that might create serious contempt for or severe ridicule of a person or group of persons on the grounds of gender identity. I think it's very clear that, as Deputy Lord Mayor said and pointed out, that this is a community, a group of people that are discriminated against regularly. We know that, we've heard that from the community themselves, but that discrimination does go further. So ridicule and contempt ends up leading to violence and also self-harm. And we, as Deputy Lord Mayor said, that this is incredibly serious. Around the world there are hundreds every year of people that are killed or bashed or self-harm because of discrimination about this particular community. So this is serious. You know, this is incredibly serious. And I did read. I mean, we did get a lot of form letters in the last few days, but we got a few that went a little bit further, and I won't read them out because they're pretty appalling. But the ones that went a little bit further made some very strong claims about a community and a movement, and did refer to this movement or community in very, very violent terms and made very, very strong accusations. And that worries me. That worries me deeply because not only of the impact that has on the people that will hear about this, that this is in a public meeting, there will be media coverage, and these, there is potential, I think very strong potential for these kind of hatred, but also just serious contempt or severe ridicule as defined under the Section 19 of the Anti-Discrimination Act against this community. And I think from my perspective, item 3 is not targeted at one event, so I don't think it would trigger action by the any particular event organiser, because it's being applied to everybody. It's basically everyone at the moment. We are saying we don't have the policies we need. We're concerned that basically we're at risk of being taken to the Anti-Discrimination Act by both sides of this particular situation. And so until we do have that, we we need to basically, if there's a risk of any event being in breach of the Anti-Discrimination Act, we're going to suspend that until we've got our policy a lot firmer. So I see item 3 as a holding measure, as a way to protect the council from potentially also being taken to the tribunal by people who believe that we have breached section 21C of the Act, which states that a person must not knowingly aid another person to contravene this Act. We do know that we've already been taken to the tribunal in the past under this particular part of the Act, a separate incident, but it has happened, and as an organisation we need to learn from that, because I'm sure that took up a lot of officer resources, so it is a risk. There is also I think a university that recently also was taken for a similar sort of breach of 21(1)(c). So I do see that all of these elements are important, and I think the clarification that Councillor Fox has put in that there's a risk that the event will breach the Act is an important one, because basically we're agreeing that we won't allow our venues to be used while we're developing the policy that could see the organisation being drawn into action by either the organisers of the event or the people that feel that we're actually facilitating this serious contempt or ridicule, which is very likely, unfortunately, from some of the correspondence I've seen, it's very likely that this event does have that risk. I just want to, can I just have 1 minute, please? Moved by Councillor Sherlock, seconded by Alderman Barakis. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I just want to also just say that, look, you know, the problem we have to be very careful of is not just that of course we allow events that occur from a whole range of people from different backgrounds, but I guess the risk is where we know that the purpose of a particular meeting is very likely to be about raising doubt and contempt about a particular group. So the equivalent of Alderman Zuko's concern about his friend the Muslim, and if the event was about this particular event was going to be about criticising another religion and casting doubt about the beliefs of that other religion, then that would also potentially be at risk of breaching the Anti-Discrimination Act. So this is about, we do need to, I think we've got some good elements here, but I do think that item 3 is an important protection based on the risk as outlined by our officers.
Lord Mayor, I'm sorry to be and possibly a pain, but I need to clarify the fact. When I talked about the word future, I didn't talk about an event happening in the timing of an event. I meant an application. So my reference to future, and that's where we're probably at cross purposes. Anybody looking at section 3, the word future is intended to refer to a future application, not an application that's already happened, it's going to be held in the future. It's really important, because otherwise we're leaving the CEO in a very dire situation when she deals with this into the future, because this application, if a new application is made tomorrow and section 3 is passed tonight, it's intended to block that application, but the application that was made whenever it was made, which relates to a future time in February, that application should be allowed.
So Alderman Thomas's amendment is not just the word future, but...
The word future is the meaning of the word future, yes.
Future applications.
Yeah.
From today onwards.
Future applications from today onwards,
Yeah,
and remove the
that's
word
fine.
bookings.
Does that include weddings?
I'm going to put that amendment now, sorry.
Oh, no.
I think it's an important clarification. I was hesitant to jump up. My whole interpretation, I think there might be some confusion in the room here about this, when we talk about applications in the future that we're going to be restricting or not holding until we get the policy back.
Yes.
It should only be referring to policy, to events that are relevant as to the Anti-Discrimination Act. it shouldn't be like if somebody wants to hold a wedding or a flower show. That's yeah.
What, yes, because we've
Just-
already,
yeah.
that's been changed through councillor Fox's amendment.
Yeah,
Okay.
again, I hesitate in standing, but I do need clarification what the effect of, if that motion gets passed, if the amendment gets passed, I will ask through you again, because we could be passing a motion that has uncertain intentions. Now, you know, the legal officer would know that if you've got uncertain laws, it is invalid. So I ask the question again. If the motion that the amendment is carried is future, will that, in context of the whole motion, whole part 3, will that stop the current booking that's happening?
Through you, Lord Mayor, if the amendment from Alderman Thomas is passed, then that will have no application to the booking that we've been talking
I
about.
appreciate your patience there with my question. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to put the amendment from Alderman Thomas, seconded by Alderman Briscoe, about inserting the words future applications and removing the word bookings. So, in part 3, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Again say no. Show of hands, all those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Sherlock.
There's one missing. You just missed Mike.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Dutta. Couldn't see the hand. Councillor Sherlock, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe.
And what about?
I called Alderman Zuko first.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Okay, all those against?
Alderman Sexton, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Coates, Councillor Fox, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor. That's lost, Lord Mayor. It's tied 6-all.
So now we have the second amendment from Alderman Zuko, which is around writing to all organisations that have got current bookings, reminding them of Section 19 of the Anti-Discrimination Act. Is that correct, Alderman Zuko?
Talking about all the bookings that we have at this point in time.
Yep. Okay, is everyone clear on that amendment?
Who's the second to
That was somebody. I think it was.
I don't think it'd
I
been
don't
moved
think
because
it
it was
got
foreshadowed. So I'm happy to.
Okay, Alderman Barakis. So all those in favour say aye.
Sorry, could you just read that again?
Do you want to say?
Through you, Lord Mayor, it's a new Part 4 that required officers to write to all bookings, reminding them of their obligations outlined in Part 1 of the motion.
Okay, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. It's carried unanimously. Okay, now we're going to go back to the motion as amended, and I'll ask Councillor Fox if they'd like to sum up.
No, but thank you very much for your comments and support, and to Helen as well.
Okay, so now what I'm going to do is go through the three pieces separately, because that was a request.
4 actually now.
Yeah, okay, we'll do 4. All right, so all those in favour of part 1 of the motion? Against say no? Oh, sorry, Alderman Zuko? All those in favour? Yeah, he's an aye. So that's carried unanimously. Item 2, all those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 3, all those in favour say aye. Against say no.
No.
Show of hands, all those in favour?
Councillor Fox, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Against?
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Sexton, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe.
Okay.
That's lost, Lord Mayor, 3 votes to 9.
And now part 4.
Oh, part 4 first.
All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Okay, thank you. Move on now to item 11.
I lost you?
Motion from Alderman Brackus.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, I'll move this one. Move that the council review its tree removal compensation policy. Thank you. To ensure that it balances the need to maintain significant tree coverage with the need for additional housing development